Okay, folks, let's look at what you shouldn't do in your A-level PE exams. This is specific for the paper 2 psychology of the OCR paper at A-level. This is taken from the moderator's reports in recent years in the 10 biggest drains or the 10 biggest reasons why students lose marks. So looking in number 10, not knowing or understanding your work. You should read your answers back and make sure it makes sense. Make sure that what you have wanted to say is what you have actually written. That goes as well for markers need to be able to read your work, so make sure it's legible, and as I just said, read it back, make sure that is actually what you wanted to write and make sure that it comes across well. Number 9, writing too much or not cutting to the question. This is not an English paper. This is a PE paper and you are well within your right to bullet point your answers apart from the extended 10 marker right at the end. In that, use the terminology, use the words that you think are going to get you that mark almost straight away in the sentences that you use. But at the same time, don't waffle on and on and on and regurgitate the same point thinking that you might get extra marks. You're not. It's not going to happen. In number 8, you're failing to obey the command words or doing more or less than is needed. Command words we mean explain, describe, justify, evaluate, and hopefully you already know what each of those command words mean in turn. And if not, go and have a look because that is going to really help you when it comes to knowing what is going to get you a mark on a describe versus an explain question. 7, perhaps not spotting the subject or perhaps spotting the subject of the questions, for example, the topic taught, but not spotting the subject focus. So let's say you've got a question on practice methods and you instantly see practice methods and you start writing your answer straight away and you've not realised that it's specific towards a beginner, and that would then completely alter how you apply your revision and understanding to that question. My top tip here would be to make sure you underline, go in with a highlighter, underline, highlight the key elements of a question because that is going to reinforce to your mind what you need to keep referring back to, particularly in those 5, 6 markers and ultimately that 10 marker at the end. Number 6, being too vague. Examiners love putting this big TV in capital letters. You are really on course to get a mark, but ultimately you haven't nailed on what you needed to say to make sure that you absolutely got a mark, and therefore that comes into the depth of your revision, your depth of understanding, and your ability to be concise and answer the question at hand. Okay, the big ones coming in at 5. You have failed to label the extra paper correctly or you're writing outside of the lines or margins. Now, you may not have noticed this, but every exam paper almost has 4 borders in the corners. That's where the papers are ultimately scanned in, and what is within those 4 corners then goes to the markers. If you write outside of that borderline, then ultimately when it's scanned in, that information is therefore lost. And it's worth knowing that to know that you can write to the side of the questions and the answers, but you've got to be within that area. And then you may, and you're more than welcome to use extra paper for any question, by the way. But you've got to, the first thing you should do is put in the margin which question you have extended your answer to. So it might be number 1, it might be 6A, it might be 6B, 6C, it might be 8, and correctly annotate that because only then can the marker give you the credit in relation to that question. And if you note the wrong question, then again, you're not going to get rewarded for the credit you've written down. In at number 4, massive one here, failing to note the number of marks available and or failing to write as many different points down from different families of knowledge answers. So if it's a 3-mark question, you've got to put down 3 separate points. If it's a 4-marker, 4 separate points, etc., etc. And you really want to make sure that your points are completely different. That's what we mean by families of answers, families of knowledge, because if you put too many similar points down, chances are they might come under the same mark scheme umbrella. Number 3, failing to understand the rule when a question asks for state to. So let me help you with that. If a question just says describe the characteristics of an effective leader and it's 2 marks, you could write down 3 or 4 points and still get the mark. But if the question says state 2 characteristics of an effective leader, then the examiner has to mark the very first 2 answers that you put down. Okay, subtly different. Number 2, failing to give accurate or specific examples when asked for them in the question, and if in doubt, put an example anyway. Coming in at number 1, the biggest area where students lose mark is within the 10 markers right at that back of that paper. So specific to 10 markers, even though the question might not allude to it, the most able and credited candidates for every element of the question, and we know that a 10 marker will always span 2 topics, will be that you demonstrate your knowledge, your AO1, understanding, knowledge and understanding, and you almost regurgitate what you would read in a revision guide for a textbook. Then the exemplification. So the question is always going to allude to something or have a topic point, and you've got to almost explain or expand that knowledge to show that you know what you're talking about in relation to what is in the question. Then there'll be development areas, which are going to be an evaluate or a justify or a critique sort of element to that question. And you almost want to show that methodology throughout that 10 marker, using paragraphs, using your specialist vocab, and ensuring that you have a good quality of written communication. And those folks are the 10 ways that you will lose marks in your exams. I hope that helps you in some way. From me to you, good luck in this upcoming exam.